아이고, 나간데 뽀로롬바이.
Those goddamn murderers. What the hell are they up to now?
Hey, Specs. What do you think they're going to be doing to us now? What was that injection this morning? I've had no reaction at all.
I don't know what it was.
Why didn't these people get it?
Be careful of contamination. The last accident cost Sakagami and Otani their lives. So be careful, everyone. Inject those people first.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. Sir, according to the previous test results, it'll be quite difficult to produce a strain of bubonic plague that is more than 60 times as infectious as the standard type. Now we're doing the 7th experiment, and here are the results of the last few tests. Sir, I heard that the Germans are performing similar kinds of tests using the Jews as subjects, and they've achieved good results. So can't we approach them?
Before the war, Dr. Ishii collected data on this project in Europe for 2 years. According to him, the German research and experiments in this area are far behind our own. Compared to them, our equipment and facilities are more sophisticated. What they've achieved so far may not be of any use to us at all. Come on now, and don't feel discouraged. You keep up the good work and report to me at once when the experiments are completed.
Yes, sir.
During the Second World War, the Japanese committed many, many atrocities. And one of the units that committed some of the most horrific of these atrocities was Unit 731. And officially, it was known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. So it was there officially to make sure that diseases were prevented and that the water was clean. But behind closed doors, they were doing experiments on human beings. They were dissecting people alive. They were testing flamethrowers on people. They were infecting people with various diseases like typhoid, like anthrax. They were infecting people with anthrax. In fact, they would tie people to wooden poles and then throw anthrax bombs at them to see the effects of anthrax, to see the effects of dirty bombs. And just about a week ago, Chinese archaeologists discovered an underground chamber that was used by Unit 731. They discovered this in the city of Andong. And it is the largest facility that was used by Unit 731. And of course, horrific atrocities were done in this underground chamber. Now, this is not big news for obvious reasons. The Japanese government really doesn't like talking about this. Although, back in the early 2000s, there was a lawsuit that was done a collective lawsuit that was done by Chinese victims of Unit 731 against the Japanese government. And in this case, the Japanese court had to acknowledge that human experiments were conducted. The United States government really doesn't like talking about this because, well, the U.S. government took all of the research, and I use that term liberally, that was done by Unit 731 to supposedly use the knowledge against supposed Soviet biological warfare. And under the justification of the Cold War, the United States government spared these scientists, really war criminals, spared them from actually receiving justice and gave them protection. And after the Second World War, really just right after the Second World War, it was known by the Americans that the Japanese had committed human experiments on American POWs. For example, in the area of Mukden in Manchuria, there were around 150 American POWs, and they were in the Japanese camp, the Japanese prisoner camp in Mukden, and they were taken away and never seen again. What happened to those American POWs? They were used for human experimentation. This was told to General Douglas MacArthur, you know, the American badass who had the sunglasses and the pipe, and he didn't want to hear anything of it. The Soviets went to the Americans and they said, look at what the Japanese fascists did to American POW. We should do a thorough investigation. Shut up, commie. We don't want to hear about it. Nope, we don't want to hear about this. Why? Because those scientists, as evil as they are, they're our guys. And we are going to use their research, the research which entailed dissecting people alive and infecting people with various diseases. We're going to use that research to plan any sort of prevention against biological warfare from the evil Soviet Union. And this story of discovering this underground torture chamber, this corresponds with a report that came out yesterday from the Japan Times. And it's a very interesting story. It talks about this museum in the Nagano Prefecture, specifically in the city of Ida, in which the Board of Education of the Nagano Prefecture opened up a museum about the Second World War, right? A museum dedicated to what happened during the Second World War. Well, they are good people in the Nagano Prefecture who want to see a presentation on Unit 731 in this museum. So the museum opened up last year in the month of May, and before it was opened, these Japanese people who want to see a presentation on Unit 731 in the museum had a sort of really a struggle with the Board of Education in this region, because the Board of Education, you know, they had discussions on this presentation, but they really didn't want to do it. And these people who wanted the presentation, they actually conducted interviews with people who were members of Unit 731. And in these interviews, these Japanese war criminals gave their testimonies. They gave their testimonies and talked about the crimes that they committed. And so these Japanese citizens, they wanted to see these testimonies presented in the museum. Well, right before this museum was opened in May of last year, the Board of Education of the Nagano Prefecture rescinded the project to present these testimonies. Why? Their excuse was, well, back in the early 2000s, the Japanese government made a statement stating that there really are no documents that have been confirmed to show that biological warfare was carried out. And this was back in 2003 that the Japanese government made this decision, made this statement. So the Japanese government doesn't want this information out. The Japanese government doesn't want really any sort of mainstream discussion on Unit 731, which really tells us a lot about the Japanese government, Japanese nationalists. I mean, the fact that the Liberal Democratic Party is still the dominating party, and it is a Japanese right-wing nationalist party. And it was founded on, it was really, if you look at the origins of the Liberal Democratic Party, the creation of the party was 100% backed by the CIA. The CIA wanted its creation because the CIA was afraid that the Japanese would one day become too friendly with the Chinese. So the CIA, the United States government, all the Cold Warriors, they wanted to ensure that Japan would have a right-wing government. So the CIA helped with the advancement of the Liberal Democratic Party. And what this goes to show is that the United States does not want peace between Japan and China. That's the reality. America does not want peace between Japan and China. America wants tensions. Why? Because America is intimidated by China, because China's got the second biggest economy on earth, and it's growing, and it has a huge population. And so that scares the Americans, and the Americans want to use the Japanese as basically as a fighting dog to sick on the Chinese. And the Japanese, because the Japanese have so much nationalism, the Japanese fall for it. And it's quite sad because there are a lot of good people in Japan, and Japan produces some really nice artwork and video games, Resident Evil, Capcom. So it would be so extraordinarily sad to see Japan one day at war, but because there are so many evil people, and because there are a lot of evil people in Japan who want to see war, they want to see nationalism, I'm afraid that war between Japan and China is pretty much inevitable at this point. I hope I'm wrong. But yeah, this really goes to show that they are very evil people in the Japanese government. America is full of evil people, and the Americans protect these war criminals and have been protecting them since the end of the Second World War. So it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. Anyway, you guys have just heard some theology. God bless.